Okay, today we're going to look at writing and graphing equations of circles. And the circle is a type of conic, so I think it's just interesting to kind of show you that conics are shapes non-degenerate technically, meaning they're not just like boring things like a point or a line or intersecting lines. Curves generated by the intersection of a plane, so think about like a piece of paper that cuts one or two halves of a double cone. So you'll see over here on the right, we get some different shapes, right? Like depending on the way we have that plane, that piece of paper cut the cone, we get an ellipse, we get a circle, hyperbola, or parabola. You should recognize the parabola. We've studied that this year. That's a quadratic. But the circle is the one we get to talk about today. So let's go ahead and take a look. Consider the following equation. So we have x squared plus y squared equals 25. Because this type of equation is new to us, we don't know what the graph of it looks like. So let's create a table of values and use this to graph the equation. So for example, if I have negative 5, I'd have negative 5 squared plus y squared equals 25. So then you'd have 25 plus y squared equals 25. Let's solve for y. So let's subtract 25 from both sides. You get y squared equals 0. Take the square root of y and you do get 0. I could do this with 3 as well. So I get like negative 3 squared plus y squared equals 25. So I get 9 plus y squared equals 25. Subtract 9 from both sides. Y squared equals 16. Take the square root of both sides. And then y equals 4. But you got to remember, in this case, when you take the square root, you get both a positive and a negative. And I can continue on here, right? I have plugging in 0 for x. So this is kind of similar to this case up here. If you have 0 squared plus y squared equals 25, that's just y squared equals 25. So you have, plus or minus 5. And if I continue to plug in these values, feel free to go ahead and do it if you want. We end up with a positive 4 and a negative 4 here, a positive 3 and a negative 3, and 0 as well. So let's think about plotting those points. If I go negative 5 on the x-axis and then 0, I end up on the far left. If I go negative 4 and then plus or minus 3, I'm over here. Negative 3 plus or minus 4 for y. When x is 0, we have positive or negative 5. When x is positive 3, we have plus or minus 4. And then we have plus or minus 3 when x is 4, and then we have got 5. So you'll notice if we connect these dots, we end up with a circle. All right, so what shape of graph do we get? We got a circle. So what additional information can you tell me about this graph? You could tell me like, hey, the circle has a radius of 5. You could look at the center. The center of the circle is at 0, 0. You could even tell me about things like the circumference and the diameter if you wanted. You could tell me about the area as well. But these are kind of some key things. So, if we think about the definition of a circle is all set of points in a plane that are the same distance or equidistant r from a given point called the center. So let's take a look at how the formula of the equation of a circle relates to the Pythagorean theorem. So we have a center, which we're calling HK. We've got some point on the outside, and that could be any xy value. But I'm going to have us go ahead and draw a right triangle in there. And let's think about the sides as A, B, and then C. So remember the Pythagorean theorem tells us a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And let's look at some things that we know here. So let's think about A. if we think about some values, like maybe I call this, for example, the point 1, comma 2. And this point, let's say it's like 5, comma 4. If you want to talk about this distance of A, it's the difference of these x values, right? I would look at 5 and the 1, so it has 5 minus 1 gives me a distance of 4. So therefore, if we kind of generalize it, this side value of A is the difference of our x values, so x minus h squared. Okay, and then this height is the difference of our y value, so y minus k squared. And it all equals that radius, which we are that c squared, which is equal to the radius squared. So this is our generic equation for a circle. I'm going to put some notes down here where h comma k is the center and r is the radius. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look. I gave you the first equation. So we've got an equation of a circle. X plus 3 squared plus y minus 7 squared equals 64. And I want you to identify the center and the radius. So the center comes from the value with x and the value with y. But remember, our equation is x minus. So really here, just like with our vertex and our absolute value, it's the opposite. So it's a negative 3 and a positive 7. And your radius is the square root of 64, which is equal to 8. Okay, well, I'm now going to go ahead and give you some graphs. We're going to decide what the equation of the circle is. So let's find the center, the radius, and then the equation. Excuse me. The center on this one's marked for us. It's at the origin here, so it's at 0, 0. Your radius, if you count out, you have 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's got a radius of 4. So remember, your equation is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. So we're going to do x minus 0, right, for the x value of the center, plus y minus 0 squared equals 4 squared, which we could simplify that a bit and just call it x squared plus y squared equals 16. Okay, let's go to the next one. The next one's a little trickier because I didn't give you the center. So I always kind of think about looking at the widest part in both directions and kind of putting a little cross there, because the center's got to be the middle of those two. So it looks like the center is at 4, negative 2. So let's go ahead and look at the radius. If I count out, I'm going out 1, 2, 3, 4 in every direction from the center, so the radius is 4. So let's plug in our equation now. X minus our h, the x value of our center, is a 4 squared, plus y minus a negative 2 is really going to give us y plus 2, right? It kind of goes the opposite in the equation. And then equals r squared, so 4 squared, or 16. Okay, let's keep going. What if you have a center of negative 4 and a radius of 3? Go ahead and try to write that one yourself. Here you'd have x plus 4, because the opposite, right? Plus y minus 5 squared equals 3 squared, which is 9. Okay, let's go to another one. We got the center of 8, negative 1, and be careful, a diameter of 18. So remember here, if you've got a diameter of 18, your radius is half of that. So our radius here is 9. Okay, so the equation of our circle, x minus 8 squared plus y plus 1 squared equals 9 squared, which is equal to 81. Okay, one more. Here we've got a center and then another point. So the center, we can go ahead and plug in x minus 2 squared plus y minus 4 squared. The only issue here is I didn't give you the radius like I did in all the rest of them. But I did give you a point, and remember a point is an x and a y value. So a little trick here is to plug this in for x and plug the other value in for y, and we're going to solve for r. So 8 minus 2 is 6 squared, plus 12 minus 4 is 8 squared, equals r squared. So we've got 36 plus 64 equals r squared. So we end up with 100 equals r squared. You could take it another step and take the square root such that the radius is 100, but really I just needed this value of r squared to plug in my equation and make it complete. So my equation would be x minus 2 squared plus y minus 4 squared equals 100. Okay, we've got 2 more examples. These 2, we're going to go backwards. I gave you the equation and we're going to now graph it. So let's start off by identifying the center and the radius. So the center, we're going to look at our x and our y, but then do the opposite. So we have negative 4 and a positive 5. And then remember this is r squared is 9. So the square root of 9 equals r. So we just get positive 3. Notice here we're not worrying about the plus and minus because the radius should be a positive value. Okay, to graph this, we're going to start at the center. So negative 4, 5. And then what I usually do is I go right 3 from that point. I go up 3, left 3, and down 3. And I connect those 4 dots to make a circle. Okay, one last one here. The center. Ooh, this is a little tricky. There's nothing there with x. So what number would I plug in for the center? I would plug in 0. My y value would be negative 2. So then the radius is the square root of 49, which we get as 7. So plot the center, 0, negative 2. Go right 7. Go up 7. Go left 7. Go down 7. Connect your points to get your circle. All right, you should be all set to do your homework now.